The sun began its descent. Golden light filtered through the trees. Shadows stretched long and ominous. The forest was alive with the promise of nightfall. A sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air. The woods whispered secrets as old as time itself.
What do you think we'll find?
Raj asked, pushing aside a low-hanging branch. His voice was barely a whisper, as if he were afraid to break the spell of the forest.
Probably just some old tales about fairies or ghosts,
Clara said dismissively. She tried to sound bored, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of excitement. The forest seemed to hold its breath, listening to their every word. The students stood frozen, their breaths caught in their throats. The circle of stones seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy. It was as if the very air around it vibrated with a power both ancient and malevolent.
What is this place?
Tom whispered, his voice barely audible above the rustling of leaves.
I don't like this, it feels wrong.
Clara took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for Tom's arm. Raj, ever the skeptic, stepped forward. He pulled out his camera, his eyes scanning the circle of stones.
This is incredible. It looks ancient, like something out of a history book.
He breathed, snapping a photo. Mia, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination, remained rooted to the spot. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that unseen eyes followed their every move. The hair on the back of her neck prickled with a sudden chill. Tom knelt down, examining the stones more closely. He brushed away a layer of moss, revealing strange symbols etched into their surface. The symbols were unlike anything he had ever seen before, a series of intricate swirls and lines that seemed to writhe and shift before his eyes.
Look at this. I've never seen anything like it.
He called out, tracing the symbols with his fingertip. Clara leaned closer, her initial apprehension giving way to curiosity.
They look like some kind of ancient writing, but I can't make any sense of them,
She said, her brow furrowed in thought. Raj, his camera clicking incessantly, circled the stones, capturing every angle.
This is amazing. We might have stumbled onto something really big here.
He muttered, his voice filled with excitement. Mia, her gaze fixed on the symbols, felt a shiver run down her spine. The symbols seemed to pulse with a dark energy, whispering tales of forgotten rituals and ancient powers. A sense of dread settled over her, heavy and suffocating.
Guys, check this out. I think I found something.
As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing, Raj stumbled upon something lying half-hidden beneath a pile of leaves. It was a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age.
The Guardians of Eldara. They who walk in shadow. They who serve the Ancient One.
The Guardians of Eldara? That sounds familiar. Wasn't there a local legend about a group by that name?
The students huddled together, their breaths misting in the cooling air. Raj carefully opened the journal, its pages creaking in protest. The writing inside was faded and difficult to decipher, but as Raj began to read aloud, his voice low and hesitant, the words seemed to come alive.
I remember something about it. There were stories of a cult that used to live in these woods centuries ago. They were said to worship some kind of dark entity.
As Raj continued to read from the journal, the tale that unfolded sent chills down their spines. The Guardians of Eldara had been a powerful and secretive group, their rituals shrouded in darkness. They believed that the forest was a sacred place, home to an ancient and malevolent entity. They performed sacrifices in its name, offering up blood and bone to appease its hunger.
This is creepy. It sounds like they were seriously messed up.
Mia, her heart pounding in her chest, couldn't shake the feeling that they were in danger. The stories of the Guardians of Eldara were more than just legends. They were warnings. And as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, plunging the clearing into darkness, Mia couldn't help but feel that they had stumbled into something ancient, powerful, and very, very dangerous. Raj flipped through the brittle pages of the journal. Each rustle sounded deafening in the stillness of the clearing. The air grew colder, a subtle shift that sent shivers down their spines. The journal spoke of a ritual, a ceremony of blood and bone.
Listen to this. It says here, when the blood moon hangs heavy in the sky, we shall offer a sacrifice to the Ancient One. Its power shall flow through us, granting us immortality and dominion over all.
Immortality? Dominion? What kind of sacrifices are we talking about?
The journal entry continued, each word chilling in its implications. The Guardians believed that, by sacrificing living beings under the crimson light of a blood moon, they could tap into the power of the entity residing within the forest. They sought not just power, but eternal life.
This is terrifying. Do you think they actually did it? Sacrificed people?
Mia felt a lump forming in her throat. The air seemed thick with unseen menace.
Look, it mentions a specific location. Deep within the heart of the woods, where the three rivers converge, there lies the altar of the Ancient One.
But what happened to them?
The journal just ends abruptly. There's no mention of what became of the Guardians.
The forest held its breath, its secrets closely guarded. The journal offered no answers, only more questions. The Guardians of Eldara had vanished without a trace, lost to the annals of time.
Maybe they got what they wanted.
A heavy silence fell upon them. The very air seemed to crackle with unspoken fear. The thought that the Guardians might have achieved their dark desires sent a chill down their spines. The forest floor creaked. A twig snapped. A low growl, guttural and primal, echoed through the trees. The students froze, their blood turning to ice in their veins.
What was that?
Probably just an animal, a coyote or something.
But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The growl had been too deep, too menacing to be a mere forest creature. It sounded almost hungry. The shadows seemed to lengthen, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. The temperature plummeted, a sudden unnatural chill that seeped into their bones.
I want to go. We should leave now.
A figure emerged from the darkness, silent and swift as a phantom. It was cloaked in a hooded robe, its face obscured by shadow. The students gasped, their hearts pounding in their chests.
Who's there?
"Leave this place, you are not welcome here!" Terror lent speed to their feet. They scrambled back, stumbling over roots and rocks in their haste to escape. The figure did not pursue, but its voice followed them, echoing through the trees, a chilling reminder that they had trespassed on forbidden ground.
Run!
They didn't need to be told twice. They fled blindly, their fear propelling them forward. The clearing, once a place of intrigue and discovery, was now a place of terror, forever seared into their memories.
They ran.
Branches whipped at their faces, tearing at their clothes. The forest floor seemed to reach up, trying to trip them, to slow them down, but they didn't dare slow down, not with that chilling voice echoing in their ears.
We have to get out of here.
We have to get out of here.
Tom glanced over his shoulder, his breath catching in his throat. The shadows seemed to move, to writhe and coil like living things. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he saw the hooded figure gliding effortlessly among the trees, its eyes burning with an eerie light.
We have to get out of here.
Clara gasped, her voice ragged. Raj, his face pale with terror, stumbled over a fallen log. Tom reached out, hauling him to his feet.
Come on, Raj, we can't stop now.
Mia, her eyes wide with fear, pushed past them, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The forest seemed to close in around them, a suffocating blanket of darkness. They burst into a small clearing, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for respite. The path forked, splitting into two dark tunnels leading deeper into the woods.
Which way?
Mia gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Tom hesitated, his mind racing. He had no idea where they were, which path might lead them back to safety. He closed his eyes, trying to remember the map he had studied earlier that day. It was no use. Fear had clouded his thoughts, leaving only a chilling emptiness.
Left. I think I remember seeing this on the map.
It was a gamble, but they had no other choice. They plunged down the left-hand path, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, a heavy, oppressive weight that pressed down on them. The trees thinned, revealing another clearing bathed in eerie moonlight. A fire crackled in the center, casting flickering shadows that danced and swayed to a rhythm only they could hear. The students crouched behind a thicket of bushes, their hearts pounding in their chests. They peered cautiously through the leaves, their breaths catching in their throats.
They're chanting. I can hear them.
A group of figures, cloaked in dark robes, stood around the fire. Their faces were hidden by hoods, but their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, a mixture of fanaticism and hunger. The chanting grew louder, a guttural, rhythmic sound that seemed to vibrate in their bones. The air crackled with a palpable energy, a sense of something ancient and powerful being summoned. The hooded figures swayed in unison, their movements growing more frenzied, more desperate. They were no longer just chanting. They were calling out, begging, pleading for something. Fresh blood! The Ancient One demands fresh blood! Tom's blood ran cold. He knew with a sickening certainty that they were the intended sacrifice. The Guardians of Eldara were not just a legend. They were real. And they were hungry.
We have to go now.
He grabbed Clara and Mia's hands, pulling them back through the bushes. They crashed through the undergrowth, their bodies screaming in protest, their minds numb with terror. The chanting followed them, echoing through the trees, a constant reminder that they were being hunted. They ran until their lungs burned, legs heavy and leaden. Each gasping breath felt like a knife twisting in their chests. But the sounds of the chanting spurred them onward, a terrifying symphony of madness echoing through the trees.
They're still coming, he gasped, his voice tight with terror. We have to keep moving.
Tom risked a glance over his shoulder. The woods were dark, the moon obscured by a veil of clouds. Shadows danced at the edge of his vision, but he couldn't be sure if they were real or figments of his fear-addled mind.
Come on, Clara, we can't let them catch us.
Raj caught her arm, hauling her upright. Mia, her face ashen, pushed on, her breath coming in ragged sobs. The forest seemed to press in on them, the air thick with the stench of damp earth and something ancient, something sinister.
We need to get to the police, he gasped, his voice hoarse. Tell them what we saw.
Raj nodded grimly. She's right. We can't go to the police, not yet. S2, media. Person with trembling voice, close-up of a fearful face in a dark forest, anxious conversation in a secluded area. Do you think they'll believe us? Clara asked, her voice trembling. We have no proof, no evidence. It'll sound like a story, a bad dream.
We can't just do nothing, she whispered, her voice filled with a chilling certainty. They're real. The Guardians, they're real.
They made their way back to their dorm rooms, each step heavy with dread. The normalcy of the campus, the laughter of students, the hum of traffic felt jarring, a stark contrast to the ancient horror they had witnessed. Tom closed the door to his room, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden silence. He leaned against the door, his heart still pounding against his ribs. He closed his eyes, but the image of the hooded figures, the chanting, the crackling firelight, seared itself into his mind. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was not over. The forest had whispered its secrets to them, and now it held them in its thrall. He glanced at his reflection in the window. Was it his imagination? Or had his eyes darkened, reflecting the shadows of the woods? He was no longer the same. None of them were. They had crossed a line, stepped beyond the veil of reality, and into a realm of ancient, primal fear. And the forest, he knew, would not let them go easily. The dorm room felt suffocating. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with unspoken fear. Tom, Clara, Raj and Mia sat huddled together, their faces pale in the harsh glare of the overhead light.
We can't stay silent, Tom said, his voice raspy. He looked at his friends, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. People need to know.
But who would believe us? Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. We have no proof, no evidence, just our word against...
Against what? Raj interrupted, his voice bitter. A bunch of ghost stories? A figment of our collective imagination?
It wasn't our imagination, she whispered, her eyes wide with remembered terror. We saw them, Raj. We saw what they were doing.
They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, the weight of their shared experience pressing down on them like a physical burden. The normalcy of campus life outside their dorm room window felt like a cruel joke, a thin veneer masking a deeper, more sinister reality.
We need a plan, Tom said finally, his voice firming with resolve. We can't just ignore this, we have to do something.
They spent the rest of the night talking, their voices low and urgent, piecing together the fragments of what they had seen, what they had learned. The journal, the symbols, the chanting, the hooded figures. It all pointed to a terrifying truth that they could no longer deny. The Guardians of Eldara were real. And they were still out there, lurking in the shadows of the ancient woods, their ancient rites revived, their thirst for blood reawakened. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the cracks in the blinds, they made a pact. They would find a way to expose the truth, to warn others of the danger that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic town. But deep down, a chilling thought took root in their minds. Some secrets are buried for a reason. The forest held its secrets close, guarding them jealously. And the guardians of Eldara had a way of silencing those who dared to pry. The fight had just begun. They had stumbled upon a darkness more ancient, more powerful than they could have ever imagined. And as they stared out into the rising sun, they knew that their lives would never be the same. The forest had marked them. The question was, would they survive long enough to fight back?